please tell me your full name and when and where you were born?
My full name is Charles Robert Stokes, Sr. I was born in East Bernstadt, Kentucky, Laurel County in 1936.
Do you have any family members that are serving or have served in the military?
Well, I sure do. I got a twin brother that's retired Army, and he pulled 2 tours in Vietnam and got wounded both times over there. He's my hero. And I come from a long line of military people. My great-grandfather was in the Civil War. That's my dad's dad, my dad's grandfather, rather. And he served in the Civil War on the Union side. He was discharged in Lexington, Kentucky. And I've got his original discharge from the Union Army and his picture. And he had sons that was in World War I, grandsons that was in World War II, and great-grandsons was in Vietnam.
What were you doing before you entered the service?
I was a student in Laurel County, London High School then. I graduated the 20th day of May, 1955, and the 6th day of June, I would join the Air Force.
Why did you choose that specific branch of the military?
Well, I was interested in aviation all through high school. Matter of fact, I was a member of the Civil Air Patrol here in London at that time, and me and my twin brother and a couple of local boys, we all was in the Civil Air Patrol, and we got interested in aviation. We pulled 2 encampments in Wright-Patterson Air Force Base, and that got me interested in the Air Force, and I've always wanted to be in the Air Force.
What happened when you departed for boot camp and during your early days of training?
Well, that was a sad story. My dad wanted me to go to college, and I told him I didn't want to go to college. I wanted to go in the Air Force. So when I went up and joined the Air Force, I was shipped out to Louisville, Kentucky to be inducted. Dad brought me uptown here to Four Paw Hotel here on Main Street, which was a local bus station. Put me on the bus by myself, rode all the way to Louisville, Kentucky by myself as a kid, and to be inducted in the Air Force. And then they put me on a train to New York for basic training.
Do you have any memories of your instructors that you would like to share?
Boot camp, I had a TI instructor, and he was a little guy. I was much bigger than he was, but buddy, he was a mean dude. He scared me to death. And we rode the train, got into New York, and got off the train, rode the bus over to the base, got off the bus, and they proceeded to chew us out because we wasn't lining up properly. We was ignorant. And then we got into the barracks, and he fell us all out in the back of the barracks in the bay. And he said immediately, if there's any man here who thinks they can whip me, step forward. We was all scared to death. We wasn't going to open our mouth. I didn't. But anyway, that's the way it got started. He got our bluff real quick. And that was it.
Did you receive any specialized training?
Yes, I did. The night before we was go to career in orientation to find out what we was suited for with our test scores and all that stuff. I laid in the bunk that night, and I prayed to the Lord. I said, Lord, whatever it is you want me to do in the Air Force, I'll do it, and I'll do my best. And I didn't know what I wanted to do. So I went in there and got my test scores back. I scored high in mechanics. And there was only 2 of us in the whole squadron that got aircraft mechanics. So that's what I went into, aircraft mechanics.
How did you adapt to the military life? Would you tell me about the barracks food and physical regimen?
Well, I enjoyed basic training. A lot of people didn't because it was hard, demanding, and they treated us good. They fed us good. We had good, clean beds to sleep in, but we had to follow all the rules and regulations. But I enjoyed my basic training and my time in the boot camp.
Do you have a nickname?
No, they called me Charlie because that's my first name. They called me Charlie in the Air Force.
Where did you serve?
Well, I started boot camp in New York, Sampson Air Force Base. Then I was selected to go to aircraft mechanics school, jet aircraft mechanics school in Amarillo, Texas. And I graduated from there in December of '55. Got my first assignment to Whiteman Air Force Base, Missouri. I got home on leave in between assignments, and I started asking around where in the world's Whiteman Air Force Base at in Missouri. Dad says, well, son, says, check with Red Cross, they'll know. So we had a Red Cross station here in London. So I went to Red Cross and asked them. Never heard of Whiteman Air Force Base in Missouri. They've only got one Air Force Base in Missouri, and that's called Sedalia Air Force Base. Well, I didn't know where I was going, and I got my car, and when I was supposed to report in, I drove from here, my first big long road trip to Missouri. I got to Sedalia, Missouri, and I asked the folks around there, I said, boys, have you heard anything about a Whiteman Air Force Base? Nope. There's a Sedalia Air Force Base, but it's down at Knobnoster, 30 miles away. And this is the middle of the night. So I drove down to Knobnoster and asked the fellow there. He says, there's no Whiteman Air Force Base. Oh, wait a minute. He said there is a Whiteman Air Force Base. It's right out here about 3 or 4 miles out of town. Here, man, I was in the middle of the night, scared half to death. I was lost. So I come to driving out to the base, and I was driving pretty fast on this little narrow country road. I was doing about 60 miles an hour, and I come up on a 90-degree curve, and it went like this, and the base gate was right there at the end of that curve. I come into the curve, brakes squalling sideways and everything. The air policeman's come out and grinned and says, you're new here, aren't you? I said, yes, sir, I am. Very new. First time I've been here. I asked him where I need to go to sign in. He said, well, you can go over to transit barracks, sign in. They'll put you up for the night. So that was my introduction to Whiteman Air Force Base, Missouri. Then other bases I was at was Blytheville Air Force Base, Arkansas. I went from B-47s to B-52 bombers. Then after Blytheville, I got shipped out to Puerto Rico, Ramey Air Force Base, Puerto Rico. I was in Puerto Rico when President Kennedy got assassinated. So we got alerted that he was assassinated, and we loaded all our B-52s with nuclear bombs, and we flew the Russian border up and down between Turkey and Russia. And we flew all up and down that border, waiting for the word to go in and bomb. But we didn't. That's a good thing. When I left Puerto Rico, I got assigned to Columbus Air Force Base, Mississippi, B-52s. And I was there when the Vietnam War broke out. And we was the first bomb wing to go into Guam to bomb Vietnam. And after that assignment, I was handpicked to go to Washington, D.C. I didn't know anything about Washington, D.C., didn't know what was there. Andrews Air Force Base. And I asked all the boys around I knew if they knowed anything, if they got any bombers up there in Washington, D.C. No. I didn't know what I was getting into. So I went to the first sergeant and I said, Sergeant, how can I get out of this assignment? I don't want to go. I want to stay with the B-52s. I was a crew chief. I was on flying status and making good money. I was single. He said, I'm sorry, Sarge, you can't get out of this assignment. I said, okay. So I went to Washington, D.C. I drove him on base and I asked him where the 89th Squadron was. They said it's down there on that last hangar on the left. So I went down there. I called from the guard shack. I'm reporting in. They said, stand there. They sent a master sergeant out. I was a staff sergeant then. They sent a master sergeant out to clear me in. And I said, now, what in the world am I getting into here? They sent a master sergeant out because master sergeant don't do things like that in the Air Force. So I found out when we walked in the hangar, there was Air Force One parked right there in the hangar. I said, man, this is what I'm getting into. So I said, I don't know what I'm going to be doing here, cleaning latrines or what, because they got master sergeants dumping trash cans and all that stuff. But the lowest ranking man there in that squadron was a staff sergeant. And so I spent 8.5 years at Andrews Air Force Base. I met my wife there. I retired from there. And when I got there, Lyndon Johnson was president. When I left there, Richard Nixon was left office, and Gerald Ford was president in 1976. That's my Air Force career.
Tell me about the day your service ended.
Well, I was married. I had 2 kids. And we was packing up to get ready to come to Kentucky. I had a pickup truck, so I convinced my wife I needed a pickup truck because in Kentucky, a man's got to have a pickup truck to retire. So I got a new Chevrolet pickup truck, put a camper top on it, and we had a Ford Fairlane station wagon. We loaded everything we had in that station wagon except for the furniture. Drove to Kentucky. My wife, she never drove a long ways before, but she followed me over Clinch Mountain into London, Kentucky. Here we come. So we stayed in, rented a house from Dad and Mom for a couple of months till we got my house built. I bought 25 acres down at East Bernstadt and we built a house on that. That was 43 years ago, and we still live there. And I had another son be born in that house. He's my baby, Ward Stokes. I got 3 kids. Bobby was the oldest one, and Teressa, they was born at Andrews Air Force Base, and Ward was born here in London, Kentucky, or UK.
What was your career after your military service?
After military service, I was a charter member of the Laurel County Optimist Club. I was wanting to get involved in civic affairs and all that stuff, community affairs, and I met Bobby Mullins, Bob Mullins' son, at that orientation for the Optimist Club, and he left his packet of material there. So some of the guys said, well, that's Bobby Mullins. Says his dad's got the Bob Mullins Ford down there. I said, well, I'll take it to him. It's just down the road. So I took his Optimus Club packet to him, and he said, what are you doing? I said, I'm just retired from the Air Force. Looking for work? I said, yeah. He said, well, I'll put you to work then. So I started selling cars and trucks at Bob Mullins. And that's my civilian career, selling heavy-duty coal trucks. Then I left there, and I stayed in the sales business for a while. Then I retired from FedEx, and I went over to FedEx and retired from FedEx.
Have you remained in contact with or reunited with fellow veterans?
Yes, I have. Matter of fact, a fellow that I was stationed with in Missouri, Whiteman Air Force Base, he called me up one day and told me about a B-47 association. All the members of B-47s, the pilots, mechanics, people that built them, they got together once a year or every 2 years for a convention. So I said, that sounds interesting. I told him I'd join up. So the first convention I went to was down in Florida at Eglin Air Force Base. And I met up with him down there and his wife. So after that, 2 years after that, we had a convention in D.C., Washington, D.C. And my brother, my son, Bob Jr., he went with me to Florida. We flew down, and he enjoyed it. So he became a member of the B-47 Association. Got word from Sonny Baumier that this may be our last reunion. This coming up in September. Says that a lot of the men that was on B-47s are dying out, and they're kind of fading away. So this could be our last B-47 association. And another member, he come by and spent the evening with us. He was a major, retired from the Air Force, but he was a enlisted man at Andrews named Chuck Place. Me and him was good buddies. He went into OCS and got his commission and retired as a major. And I contact with those guys.
How did your military experiences affect your life?
Well, it made me realize that the world wasn't just Laurel County. The world was a big place, and there's a lot of different people in this world, and I wasn't the only one. Anyway, it made me appreciate Laurel County and Kentucky, and having a family and kinfolks around, and that's the main thing that I learned while I was in the military, that life is not guaranteed, that you better enjoy what you got when you can.
Has your military experience impacted your feelings about war and the military in general?
War is terrible, and I've seen the effects of war on people, and especially my brothers and me and my brother-in-law. He's retired Navy. He almost lost his life in Vietnam, and it affects you. And I, I don't like it, but it's necessary sometimes to go to war. But I think sometimes we go to war too quick. People don't go to war, governments go to war. And, and the people I met around the world, they're just like we are. They want to provide a living for their family, security for their family, and be able to have a job, go home, eat supper, go to bed, and raise a family. And that's the main thing that most people want. They don't want to go to war and fight and lose their life. So I believe if the government, all the politicians pull the tour on battlefield, they'd change their minds about going to war quickly.
What message would you like to leave for future generations who will view this interview?
That the only reason that I've considered sitting down for this interview to leave some kind of record of my service to my country, service to my community and my church. And I enjoy history. I did when I was in high school. I enjoyed history. And I just think I've got a good family, a loving family, and grandchildren, and grandsons, and granddaughters, and I love them all. And I just want to know that their grandpa and their father and their husband did what he did when he did it. And I love them very much.